On the podcast, I have none other than the Technical Alchemist, David Mercury, and it's happening right now.
The Everett Lee Show podcast, a shot of entertainment.
The Technical Alchemist, David Mercury. Welcome to the Everett Lee Show. How you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me. And I should have started this off with greetings. Thank you for having me on your show.
Nice. I love it. I love it. Everything I expected, nothing more, nothing less from the Technical Alchemist, David Mercury. A couple weekends ago, I was at Adrenaline Wrestling Chapter 2, and I got to see up close and personal for the first time the Technical Alchemist, David Mercury, perform in the ring. And by God, I told Thump Dupree, I said, I want that guy on my podcast. I love to talk to him. He is such a great technical wrestler, and it was amazing seeing the technicality that you executed in the ring, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Humbled. I try to stay close to the, what people before me kind of established. I try to pay homage to that every time I step in the ring.
I love it, man. I loved it. I was not disappointed there because you and I forget I'm trying to jog my memory here on his first name. It was Decay. Kevin.
Decay. Yeah.
Kevin Decay. That was when he came out. I was there with my brothers. We were the crazy John Strange, crazy bastard fans with the faceplates. I was there with my brothers. When you get four brothers together, we have a good time, man, because we love everything. We eat everything up and absorb everything right there at a wrestling show. And when he was introduced, and then when you came out, I was like, my brothers are like, what? It's like they never seen anything like this, because my brothers are old school wrestlers and they're not used to like with a gimmick, seeing a gimmick like yours, and they're like, what is this, man? And I was like, I don't know, but it's cool. My one brother was like, dude, he's like, look at the outfit, man. He's like, look at his manager, he's holding the belt and stuff. It was just neat. We took it in. We're like, wow. And then when you got in there and that match started and you started just locking up and just getting into that match there, my brother's like, man, this guy's technical. I said, yes, he is, man. I was like, I loved it. I loved everything that I seen, because I said, this is going to be the most technical wrestling match we're going to see tonight. And it was.
Thank you again. Being able to get into the ring, any opportunity I get to get into the ring with one of my students and actually take them for the ride that I helped build for them when they came over to the wrestling lab in search of pursuing their dreams in wrestling. And there's always certain aspects that I always try to share with them while we're training. And when they have that opportunity presented on a show, because it's very far and in between when you get those opportunities, and when they finally present themselves, I try to tell them, like, you remember that time during this month I told you something? And they were like, yeah, somewhat. You're going to find out tonight. Like, you're going to experience what I'm talking about. And being able to finally, what I like to call the full circle of with training and then having to share that opportunity with them in front of a crowd that is there just, excited and pumped to be at this wrestling show, and for them to experience that, it's incredible. And I had a great time being able to wrestle my student DJ, Devin Decay, out there. I'm looking forward to next month when they present Chapter 3. And that month I will be taking on another one of my students that I helped craft in the game by the name of Leroy Shogun. And yeah, I've been watching him, and he's been doing his own thing, and it's been gaining a lot of popularity. But now it's time for him to take all he has learned out there in the field and get it put under the microscope by his coach, the Technical Alchemist.
Nice. I love it, man. I love that you taking your students out there. I do like watching the teacher versus student matches, because it's like, how much knowledge has the student absorbed from the teacher to actually get out there and put on a match and entertain people and be a face or a heel in that ring, which I find amazing. And before we started recording tonight, you've been in the business for quite some time now, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah. I will be 21 years come November.
Wow. Wow.
21 years. Yeah. I sit back and I think about that, and it's like, it's a blessing. I'm humbled to be able to reach that milestone, because you've seen a lot of change, you see a lot of things come and go, and you see people come and go, and being able to be at somewhat of a young age that I'm at. I just turned 40. So I can't say I'm old, because then there's older guys that are like, "Shut up, kid, you're still young," So it's like, to be able to say, though, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nearly, pretty much more than half of my life, I dedicated and studied the craft. I still study the craft, and not only being able to stay fresh and new to the game and learning, but being able to take that and those educations, those lessons, and being able to share that with my students. I just think to myself, if they're fortunate to make it to the 10 and the 20-year mark, what will become of what they learned from me today? What I mean? Hopefully I'm around to see some of it, you know what I mean? Because every day is a blessing. But, to be able to wonder what the future holds for them is very exciting.
Amazing. When did you get into wrestling? When growing up, what was your first exposure to wrestling?
Oh, well, I being a little kid, everybody's got stories where they, watched it with their families, and my dad, he was one of the ones that I shared the time with, watching wrestling and everything. And it was something that we watched on the weekends, and we would from time to time go and check out. It wasn't until we moved to Florida. When we arrived in Florida, we started checking out some of the local shows at the Fort Hessler Armory. Back before it was torn down, they had the Bayfront Center in Tampa, which was a big area where they had a lot of wrestling. And then back then it used to be called the Sun Dome, but now it's called the Yingling Center. Right. And there's every little spot where there was wrestling, and then there was also local shows. But it wasn't until I was in the 5th grade, and I met this kid by the name of Jean Gagne. And we hung out and we grew up together. And there was one opportunity where he would share stories and be like, my dad's a wrestler and my godfather is a wrestler. And I'm like, man, yeah, that ain't true. And then being able to have the opportunity to one time go and stay the night at his house. And that's where it all like kind of came in. And it's like, seeing pictures on the wall of his dad. Now, his dad was a wrestler. His dad, back in the day, was Frenchie Martin. Mm-hmm. And Frenchie Martin used to manage Dino Bravo, and he had his time in WWE as a manager. But it wasn't till I started looking at all the other pictures that they had and seeing that his dad had the opportunity to wrestle Bruno Sammartino and had the opportunity to wrestle Ric Flair and Abdullah the Butcher and Carlos Colon. Like, his dad, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know much of his dad's history until I saw that. Right. And that's where it started really growing. And fortunately, we stayed good friends. We grew up. I mean, I still currently talk with him. I ride him a little bit every now and then, trying to get him back into the ring for one last match. But we'll see what comes of that. But being able to meet his dad and getting introduced to just different people, and then getting the opportunity to get a shot to wrestle. But I mean, like, wrestling, this is a long story. Wrestling is just, it's been around. Like, where I grew up at, it was a hotbed of wrestling. Like, I've always run into Bill Alfonso. Where I grew up at, I ran into Rocky Johnson a lot. Where I grew up at, like, I grew up in Town and Country, which is an area of Tampa. And throughout Tampa, it's a plethora of wrestlers. And, like, there isn't many places, you know what I mean, you don't go to where you are not going to not run into someone in the industry.
Right.
And it's just always been around my life. Like, there was no avoiding it. What made it better was, I met a wrestler by the name of Tony Marino, who said he would work with me. But before he would work with me, he wanted me to take amateur wrestling. So I dedicated myself 5 years for doing amateur wrestling. And once he saw that I could wrestle and everything, he started working with me and was able to help me get ready to at least go out and wrestle and not hurt myself or hurt anybody. I was able to, after working with him, at the same time, I was backyard wrestling with Frenchie's Kid and a couple of other wrestlers. One of them is Eddie Torres, the Authority. I've known Eddie for a very long time, and he's a brother as well. And he was able to get me an opportunity back in the day at this little promotion out in Zephyr Hills called New School Wrestling.
Okay.
A lot of the older guys know about that one. It was like the little promotion. People would try to work their way up so they can go work for like IPW or something, because some of their guys would go there. Right. But it wasn't until I met Steve Madison there. Oh, man, when I met Steve Madison and got to work with him, he gave me the opportunity of a lifetime, and that was introducing me to Steve Kern. And
Steve Kern, I've heard of Steve Kern. Yes.
He is one of the premier Florida legends. I mean, this guy's wasn't only just very smooth and very aggressive in the ring. You know what I mean? The guy had a mind for it. He had psychology on point. And not only that, but just, the man is an excellent coach. Right. And being able to have that opportunity provided by Steve Madison to meet Steve Kern, I did everything I could to stay where I was and learn anything that he could teach me. And to this day, I stay in contact with him, and he's always in my corner. He's always teaching me something, which is like, what more can you ask for? You go from being this wrestler and you grow up in this business and you do well, and then you have someone that cares enough about you that's like, all right, well, let's take this to the next level. Let's turn you into a coach. And he's helped me become a better coach, along with Jay Lethal and Ryan O'Connor. And I could go on when it comes to wrestling, brother. It's in my blood. It's all alchemy to me, my man.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. I like that, man. You get to meet Steve Kern, and you still talk to him today, and he's still giving you advice, and that's great. You've developed that relationship. I think that's amazing to have that relationship and that support there with someone like Steve Kern. Now, when did you first step into the ring? When you first stepped into the ring, what was your first? Actually, I asked Emily Locke this last week, and I'll ask you, what was it like taking your first bump? I always like hearing the story about people getting in the ring and taking their first bump.
Okay, so all right, my first bump wasn't bad in the ring. to be honest with you, it was actually a lot softer than what I was actually used to. You know, those little like tumbling mats, those little blue or black tumbling mats that they have and they sometimes put around the ring.
Yeah.
Well, I was somewhat taking bumps on that thing back in backyard wrestling when we would have a tarp over it with a little bit of like extra like carpet padding or something like that. But like,
okay.
That's what I learned to bump on. And when I finally got to get into a ring, I will say this, my first match, this is where we'll tie them together. My first match that I had, that ring I wrestled in. Now that ring was a little rough, and that was the new school wrestling ring. It was at this place called Joe Bob's. And the guy actually used to do boxing shows as well, and he converted a boxing ring into a wrestling ring. So,
wow,
yeah, it was pretty tough. Like, but to me, it was like it was everything because once you get into a ring, there's nothing like it. Like, there's something about the ring that is awesome, and I took my first bump, and it was a little rough at first, but I was just so excited to be in that ring and finally taking that step to where, brother, I was a bumping maniac.
That is cool. I like that. I like that. Now, when you after you got in the ring and you pretty much got into the business after your first match and wrestling there for a while. What promotions did you wrestle for? Did you go out and look for promotions, or how did that go about there getting booked?
Oh, well, back then, you know, it was a lot different. It was before the internet like really took off.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when I started, people were still using MapQuest and
MapQuest, I remember that, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like they were still recording with VHS and putting tapes out. Like I actually still have a couple of tapes that have my matches on it. And I look back and I'm like, wow, so much has changed. But
the tapes.
How it was back then. You know, you found out where a show was going to be at, and you heard it through the grapevine, and you showed up. You showed up to those shows. You tried to help out. You tried to do everything you can and introduce yourself to the bookers. And it's like, hey, you know, I would like to work your show or put my name in the hat or something. Is there anything I can do? And, you know, they'll let you know if they had a spot or anything, if anybody vouched for you or whatnot.
Right. Right.
But there was a back then. It was IPW. IPW was one of the big deals back then, and also NWA Florida was one of the big things as well. And those were the two like I wanted to get in with. I had a couple of shots with IPW, and then it grew, and then I got the opportunity to work the NWA Florida stuff. There was also a couple of promotions. There was in Central Florida, there was at the time Southern Championship Wrestling. They were out of the DeBerry area, Sanford, Orlando area. Then there was also down south. There was like MXPW. There was a couple of shows that were going around, but then I've also came across a lot of like little pop-up shows and stuff. But I would have to say now, sitting back and thinking about it, man, like my first couple of years were pretty well traveled in Florida. I made my rounds. I made it to Jacksonville. I'd say within my first 5 years, before my first 5 years was even in, it was like 4 years in. Mm-hmm. And depending on the time with the car and all that, yeah, man, I got opportunity to just wrestle all around the state, from the Panhandle to down south of Miami. Man, I was just anywhere I could go, I was there.
Nice. That's amazing. Getting to travel the state of Florida and getting to wrestle, getting to show people your craft and what you brought to the table. Now, when you were first started out, were you mostly booked as a face or a heel?
I had my spurts when I was with my tag partner as a baby face. We used to be known, me and my tag partner Stash. We used to be known as Fahrenheit 420, and a lot of the times we were kind of like faces because we were just joking around, acting like stoners. And,
I was gonna say Fahrenheit 420. Now I'm just like, wow. I mean, you got to start somewhere, right?
Well, yeah, his name was Stash, and I was David Mercury. So I mean, Fahrenheit 420. It kind of played out. You know what I mean? But when we broke away and he started focusing more on his schooling and everything like that, and I was doing singles, I started getting booked predominantly more as a heel, and I would always go through and help promotions with their big baby faces. They would always get good matches out of me when they booked me against their big baby faces. For a good shtick, I was used very often with Southern Championship Wrestling. And I got to work a lot of guys through that promotion, a lot of different baby faces, even to the point where they gave me an opportunity to work Norman Smiley, which I felt was a very, very awesome match.
Nice.
Enjoyed and learned thoroughly. That man was a mat genius, and being able to work and roll with him was fantastic.
Yeah, Norman Smiley. I remember him back in the day when I watched WCW Nitro. I was a senior in high school. Monday Night Wars was going on. Of course, I'd flip back and forth, watch first hour of Nitro, 9 o'clock comes, hit in the other room, record the rest of Nitro, watch Monday Night Raw. And I would do that, go back and forth and watch. And Norman Smiley, I liked him. I liked his matches. He put on some great matches. I'd have to say one of my favorite gimmicks that he did was when he's like, I'm hardcore. I'm so hardcore. I drink milk out of dirty carton. And he's sitting there showing it's just, he put on some entertaining matches, man. And he's just his ring, just everything he did in the ring, it always was a purpose or a reason why he would do something. The psychology, his in-ring psychology, it made me want to see this guy. That's like, what's he going to do next? Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So who else? So you worked Norman Smiley. Who else have you worked in the ring that people may know of?
Ooh.
Is that stump you there?
MVP before he became MVP and was signed with WWE.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Actually, it was in a tag match, and it was the tag match where me and my partner Stash were able to capture the NWA Florida tag team titles in a tag team elimination match. And in that match, we had quite a few guys. We had, it was MVP. We also had Scoot Andrews, the Black Nature Boy, Scoot Andrews. We also had Eric Stevens and Mikey Batts. Eric Stevens went on to do Ring of Honor for a while before he decided to take a step away. Mikey Batts, he was cousin of Billy Kidman, and he was wrestling for a while, but then became a ref for WWE when they started the FCW here in Tampa.
Yes.
And then after that, I don't know what happened with him, but I got to work those guys. Who else? The Shane Twins, they were known in WWE as the Gemini. They came out with Supernova when he was doing his whole physic gimmick.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to work with them. Shoot, man. The list is big. I've been able to work with Jay Lethal. I've been able to work with, well,
Quite a bit of people.
I had a couple of shticks with being enhancement talent for FCW, so I got to work guys like Titan and Alpha Junior. I remember getting thrown around in a battle royal by Reckline, who was the last ECW champion before they closed down the ECW brand.
Okay.
Shoot, I've got to work Larry Sabisco in a tag match and for FCW. Like, the list goes on. I've
Nice.
been very, very fortunate. Pablo Marquez, I've gotten to work with. Yeah, man.
you got to work with a lot of great people, great workers in the ring. I think that's great. Larry Zbyszko, man. I mean, the living legend right there, Larry Zbyszko. Sure. That's cool. FCW. I remember watching a few years ago a documentary about FCW because eventually that became NXT because that was
correct.
Because they moved. Before NXT, they had OVW. That's where their developmental area was, and then they moved it down to Florida to FCW, and then they pretty much after that that became NXT, which I think is interesting story how it started from up north and brought down south to Florida. I mean, Dusty Rhodes. He would you agree or disagree, or what would you think? Dusty Rhodes pretty much put Florida on the map for wrestling. A lot of people say he did. Do you agree with that or not?
Well, there's always that front runner. The man contributes so much. He contributes so much to the business, but everybody, one thing that I've known is that everybody got help from somebody.
Right.
You know what I mean? When it comes to wrestling, you don't just skyrocket on your own unless you're a millionaire who could open up your own promotion type deal. But that wasn't Dusty, and that wasn't how it was back in those days. So, it was a good group of people that got together, that got an opportunity to work with a promotion, and were able to do something. They were able to put aside their differences and come together for a common goal and say to themselves, we're going to perform a show like no other. And he was a very, very good talker. Not only a good talker, but he had the mind for it. And he got to share that with guys who were able to input their intelligence and their ideas, and they've been able to work together to help them put Florida on the map. I always look at it, and it wasn't always just Dusty. There was a lot of guys that played an important part. Eddie Graham, if it wasn't for Eddie, putting in and doing stuff and then bringing people in like, Larry, AKA, Great Malenko, and working with those other guys, you know what I mean? Florida wouldn't have became what it becomes. It's never just a one-man operation.
Right.
It's a group effort. Wrestling is a group effort. And he was that front guy, and he knew what he was doing. It's like having a job. You go into a job and you got that one supervisor that, number one, everybody likes because he knows how to talk to them. He has a good time. But when it comes to implementing ideas and stuff that the job needs to have it be successful, he's there to make it successful, and then he's there to follow it through. And that's when you describe those characteristics. Isn't that somebody that you want to get behind?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, he was great. He was great on the mic, man. Promos. I mean, he delivered, one of my dad's and one of my favorite promos, Hard Times. That promo right there, man. I mean, just Hard Times. And yeah, I would definitely get behind someone like that right there. And you're right about that. it was a group effort to put Florida on the map for wrestling. But yeah, he was up in the front there. But it took everyone to do that, and
yeah.
It just amazes me how many promotions there are in Florida. There's so many like territories. And it's ridiculous from north to south. It's just
central. Yep, you got north, central, and then like to be honest too, like when you look at north, the north is cut in half. You got your Jackson from McKinley to Jacksonville, and then you got your promotions from just past Tallahassee, and Chiefland going out to Panama City and Pensacola, you know what I mean? Then you got your little central group of people that run across from Tampa, that go across to Orlando and then make their way to Daytona, coming down even to Fort Myers a little bit. But then you cut from Fort Myers down, and then you go down south, and you got promotions like FEW and CCW. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, dude, Florida is just it's four regions really.
Mm-hmm. It is. There's so much, because if you come to Florida and you can't find a good independent wrestling promotion that's putting on a good show, you're not looking. You're not
Correct.
looking, because. Like, I was talking to my brothers, and they were talking about going over to the Ocean Center here, because I live in Daytona. We were talking about going over to Ocean Center to see WWE, and they were, talking about the price of tickets, and I'm like, man, it's like, I can beat that. And they said, what do you mean? I said, there's a promotion in Ocala, Adrenaline Wrestling. And I told them how much it was going to cost and how long. And I just had to show them some stuff. I had to show them some promos and some matches. And as soon as they saw the crazy bastards, because my brothers are old school, but one of our friend that was there with us, he's like a brother with us. He's grew up with us. He remembers me back when I was just like very little. That's how long he's known me. As soon as he seen John Strange come out with the plate, he's like, who's that? I was like, John Strange. He's like, I want to see that guy. I was like, okay, man. It's like, how much are your tickets? I mean, he excited. He's like, I never seen anything like that. And I remember pulling up like the promo from you there for the show, and I was like, look, and we just like, there was so much stuff that I just threw at him. I'm like, look, I was like, you can see great matches from great talent. Just, that out west here, not that far. I mean, well, yeah, it's a little bit of drive, but you'll get your money's worth. Trust me. We went out there and we talked about it. They talked about it all the way back when we drove back to Daytona. They talked all about it and stuff, and we're just talking about the different things that we've seen, the matches, and just who was there, and it just had a great time. And it's like, they're like, man, we couldn't get away with that at the Ocean Center, how we carried on. I said, no, you couldn't, man. I was like, no. I was like, yeah, we heckled the crowd, I mean, we heckled, the talent and stuff. It's like, it's wrestling, man. Is you get a reaction out of someone. If you get
of course, it's what you paid for. You go out there to, forget about life, forget about the outside world, and just interact with these live characters that are in front of you and that are performing some outrageous stuff in this ring that is literally, you could almost touch it. You could almost reach inside and be like, man, I'm almost there, but look at these guys. This is freaking awesome. It is.
And I seen a post. This been actually been a few years ago. I seen a post. Someone brought it up, and I was like, it's a good point, because the people that go out and they spend this outrageous money on like WWE like tickets, and like for like going to like a WWE pay-per-view to like to go in to see like Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown, and they spend all this money, they drop all this money on this stuff, especially like on the pay-per-views. especially like on the floor seats, because those ain't cheap. Because I mean, you get a fancy chair for the pay-per-view, which is great. I've done it a couple times back in the past, a few years ago. But when the same person goes to an independent wrestling show, and then there's the worker with his table selling the merch, and they kind of complain about what they're charging. It's like, look, man, you spent this much on these tickets here. It's like, buy a shirt, man. From because that right there, the merch they sell, it's like it can help take them to the next town tomorrow night, put on another amazing show that would be better than what you'd see on TV, because independent wrestlers, man, they give their blood, sweat, and tears. That's why I love independent wrestling and a lot of the workers, because of what they do, and they do. It's like, and it just kills me when they complain about merchandise price, and it's like, well, it's like, come on, man, look how much you dropped on those tickets. Come on, support independent wrestling.
Yeah, what you normally pay for like a WWE event, you can literally get your ticket, you can get a snack, a drink at the concession, you can buy an 8x10, buy a t-shirt, and who knows, they might even have like stickers or something. You could buy all that stuff and it would still be under $100. It would most likely even be under $75.
Exactly.
$100, to go to this just for your seat alone, then another $25 to $30 for their t-shirt, and then you pay for parking at their at whatever event that they are. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's like you go to a mom and pop shop. You buy local. You know what I mean? Because it's going back into the community that is there, and it's going to help those guys. You know what I mean? That are putting on that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that's why, like, I do like supporting mom and pop and independent wrestling, because I know where it's going, because again, that worker's gonna go to the next town tomorrow night, gonna put on another amazing match, and he's gonna win people over, and him or her are gonna sell some merchandise to help them out. Sometimes it just irritates me that when people don't see that, it's like, wow, man. And again, like my brothers, I hate to sound like I'm marking out about that show, but it was just great, man. Because I'm looking forward
right there, dude. Yeah. It's not about marking out. That's what it's about, dude. You literally just had great memories of riding down there with your brothers, man. You're going to a venue in the Silver Springs, man, right out there in the middle of Ocala. Got a nice little pool and a lake behind it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the last place you really would think wrestling was going to be held out that night. But then you go inside that building, and oh man, you see that. I love going into that building. It was my second time going into that building that last show.
Oh, it was?
Every time I go in there, it's just something about it that just feels good. You know what I mean? I like this place is gonna start drawing, man, if people just keep coming out and enjoying what we're putting out there,
Mm-hmm.
It's very unique, and like you're getting those memories, man. Don't say you're sounding like a marketer. You're not. You're someone that loves what they're talking about, man. And that's your most recent memory of enjoying it, dude. So by all means, man, keep going.
Yeah, it's just I think too that David, that it's been a while since I actually got to go to a show with my brothers. I actually spend some time with them, going to a wrestling show. I mentioned on when I had Emily Locke on, I mentioned about my one older brother made Tyler Breeze break character at an NXT show, which was like a few years ago, which was great. But I just I enjoyed everything there is with everything that I've seen with Adrenaline Wrestling, man. And it's just having those memories, it's just amazing. And one thing we were talking about, my brother brought up, he said, you hear about Ric Flair's last match? I don't know if I know you've heard about Ric Flair's last match that he's going to be having at the end of this.
Last match?
Yeah. Of course you heard. I had a friend of mine send me a video of the latest Ric Flair like documentary thing, but there was like a swerve in it on who he's going to be wrestling, and I was swerved by it. I'm like, wow, I could see reason why they're doing this because of Ric Flair's age, but two, it's going to be great because he's going to go out there, he's going to have his moments, but he's not going to, have the whole match on him because I think they're doing it smart, making it into a tag match. And I like the fact that it's going to be Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett, especially Jay Lethal, man, because Jay Lethal, he pretty much, he idolized and, Ric Flair. And you said that you trained with Jay Lethal. How is that? How's that relationship there with Jay Lethal? Because he's put a mark in independent wrestling, man. Because if you don't know who Jay Lethal is, you've been living underneath a rock.
Yeah. I have to say it's definitely something that I wouldn't have expected. But at the same time, being very fortunate, to be friends with Jay is something because I was having the opportunity to go and at the time he had there was this little building that him and another guy, Dax, aka David, they had a little building together where they were running school out of, but it was literally walking distance from my house. So I would go over there just, to roll around and not get really involved. But I started helping Jay out with some of those guys. And he then brought me on as an assistant coach. Shortly after, we started, building more and more people were coming to our classes that we ended up moving from Tampa and going to Pinellas Park. And hell, man, we even thrived through COVID, which was tough times. But we were then able to take it from the Lethal Academy and then turn it into the wrestling lab once we brought in Ryan O'Connor from Ascension into the fold with us. And now we're still prospering. We just started a new summer class now. Of eager individuals that are ready to make their next step into pursuing their dreams and professional wrestling, which is always a great opportunity. But to have this friendship and also being able to work with Jay Lethal has been nothing short of but exciting. We've always have a good time together.
That's amazing, man. I did finally get to see Jay Lethal wrestle in, I think it was 2016 ROH. They came to Fort Lauderdale. Me, my wife, and my nephew and his friend. We drove down to Fort Lauderdale for ROH, and the main event was Kenny Omega, Young Bucks versus Jay Lethal, Dalton Castle, and I cannot remember who the third person was. It was a 6-man tag. But like I mentioned this on the last podcast, Jay Lethal, as soon as he hit the ring, it was mixed, because a lot of people were for the Bucks and Omega. As soon as he hit the ring, he got some boos and some cheers. It was kind of mixed there, but I cheered for him because I was like, wow, I've seen him wrestle so many times on ROH. I've seen him wrestle on Impact. Now I get to see this up close, and it was amazing. I was not disappointed with what I saw in the ring, and I loved it. I loved it. It was entertaining, and I was watching some of the stuff he was doing with Flair. Man, it's neat. I like watching him work in the ring. I do. There's something about him. It's just how he works, and his psychology. What I like is when he's a face, he works that ring as a face. When he's a heel, it's like, oh man, he's just, you want to hate him. You know, it's just so good. And that's the one thing that I think that I don't see too much of nowadays with a lot of talent and stuff, is that psychology. Because like my favorite person for in-ring psychology growing up, you know, looking back after learning about it and stuff, picking a vet's head, was Jake Roberts. Jake Roberts, just his psychology, in-ring psychology. And do you think that a lot of today, a lot of talent that's out there now, don't use enough in-ring psychology? Do you see that?
I want to say, and really want to put it and say yes, and be firm with that. But I think it's starting to change. Everything goes through a cycle, even professional wrestling, and everything becomes full circle. You know what I mean? Like the past gets reused. It looks as if it's new, and you know, kids are going to start to realize that are out there that, you know what, if you want to stay in the game long and you want to have a full fun time, you have to wrestle smarter. You have to wrestle smarter. And the only way you can do that is by implementing psychology and learning how you're not only going to go out there and perform wrestling, but you're going to have the fans enthralled and engage and bringing them along for that story that they're paying for to come and see. They want to see the battle between this bad guy versus this good guy, and they want to see what the pandemonium and what the outcome of all this carnage is going to be when these two finally face Friday night at your local VFW. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you have to give that to them. And I'd have to say I've been very fortunate that, you know, just this past weekend, being able to travel and go and do some wrestling, that I felt like if I wasn't able to wrestle after today, that I felt like I left it better than I found it. And it's because I've been implementing and at least influencing and telling people, you know, watch some old school wrestling and learn some psychology, man. You'll learn that people will follow you more if you do that. And it's something that I preach all the time.
Yeah, I definitely one thing I want to point out is I definitely seen that in that match you had with Decay at Adrenaline Wrestling there. When you were working that arm, you were believing it. My brothers were like, "Oh man!" It's like you just working that arm, working the hand, just doing that, man, and it just would. That's what I like. I like to see heel get out there. I like to see him get heat, bring heat to the crowd, and get that fan heat. I love that, you know, and just start working a body part. You know, like if it's your finisher, you're gonna work that part. You know, the setup, do your finisher, and then while you're working it, and you're just, you know, getting, you know, they're getting that heat from the fans, and it's like, shut up, you know, you give back to the fan, and you know, it's just, you just rile them up more, you just bring that, and
have them invested.
Yeah, you got to have them invested there. And I was sitting there last week when I was talking to Emily Locke. She's a student of yours and Jay Lethal's, and she did mention a story about, you know, trying to take, it took her a while there to take a kick to the face. She told that story there, and just when her match she had against Eliza Hayes. She brought the heat, you know. She did that, and she's not been in it that long. From after talking with her and what she mentioned on the podcast there, but your name was dropped a couple times, 2 or 3 times, and she's doing great. so far from everything I've seen. I brought up that one gimmick I seen when I was at Knockout there, the crazy friend gimmick. That was so great. She took something and ran with it, you know, and I loved that, and I loved the mindset that she has, you know, because she's learned it from you and Jay Lethal, and she keeps that same mindset, David. She's gonna go pretty far, man. She is gonna go far.
So. I hope all of our students from the wrestling lab can take this little spark and have it just take them all the way, like have it energize them and take them all the way to where their wildest dreams come true. Like 20 years in my experiences, man, it's been nothing short of exciting. So like, I hope the best for them all.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to see more. I'm looking forward to see more coming out of the wrestling lab. I'm looking forward to seeing more matches. I did say to Emily, I said, I want to see David Mercury in a submission match. I want to see you. She said, you probably have one. If I search on YouTube, you probably have one. But I told her, I said, I want to see. I was so impressed with what I seen that I said, I'd love to see him in a submission match, man. I'd like to see what you can do in a submission match. Yeah.
Well, normally what I try to tell people when it comes to just to give you a heads up, my phone is a little short on battery power, so I'm gonna have to wrap this up shortly.
Okay.
We can, though, in the future. I'm always open on having a part 2 if you would like to have me back on.
Oh yeah, definitely.
More, but just to wrap this one question up. When it comes to my character, I normally work body parts, but the body parts that I work are not necessarily for a submission, but for me to then isolate and be able to pin them with no restriction. You feel me? Like, yes. I have all types of pins out of nowhere, and a lot of those pins normally involve with me working a certain body part and then being able to isolate it so that I'm able to pin them. And the reason for that theory is I feel like, you know, people, including in UFC, have been taught that if you get put into some type of a submission or something, you tap out quickly, and that it's honorable. That, you know, oh, you tapped out, you saved yourself for another day. But when it comes to a pin, man, you're holding a person down against their will for 3 seconds. Those 3 seconds will be etched into that person's head, because that was in that point in time in their life that they couldn't do anything for 3 seconds. And that's all that I need to procure the information I need to make my technical alchemy better.
Nice. Nice.
So that's why I like to pin people.
I love it. Before your phone goes out, anything you want to plug real quick? Shows, social media?
Oh, well, I know there's a show coming out sometime this week in Largo. I think I might have to take my alchemy there. And then next 2 weekends I'm going to have off to kind of recoup, because on August 6th is it. It's it. Chapter 3. Yes, and that's where I get Leroy Shogun. Check out my social media, man, The Technical Alchemist. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. And just so you know, so you can keep excited, check out my fan page, because I will be dropping promos soon. And also by this Friday, check out my YouTube channel, The Technical Alchemist, David Mercury. I will be having some matches up from my journeys of taking my technical alchemy on a savage journey into the heart of the American dream. And it starts with guys like you who keep supporting us, man. So keep your eyes peeled and you stay in touch. We'll definitely talk again soon.
Oh, yes, definitely. Thank you, the Technical Alchemist, David Mercury, and I'm Everett Lee. Want to wish everyone a good night and a good evening, and we'll see you again next time for another episode of The Everett Lee Show. Peace.
Follow The Everett Lee Show on the following social media platforms: Facebook, The Everett Lee Show; Twitter, @The Everett _Lee; Instagram, Everett Lee. Subscribe, follow The Everett Lee Show on the following platforms: Anchor.fm/Everett Lee Show, YouTube, Everett Lee, and Johners Podcast Network, WrestlingWithJohners.com.